use the PAVE checklist. PAVE, pilot in command. Think about yourself. Think about who's piloting the aircraft, and use the I am safe checklist to make sure that the pilot or yourself is ready to fly. Think about the aircraft. Make sure that you're familiar with the aircraft, it's safe to operate, it's got charged batteries, all of that. Think about the environment. That's the weather, that's the terrain, trees in the area, towers, things that could cause flight hazards. Think about the airspace, aircraft moving nearby. And then think about those hazardous attitudes that we mentioned, external pressures. PAVE, pilot in command, aircraft, environments, and external pressures. Basically, you want to sort of think about all aspects of your flight, of your planning, of yourself, whoever's doing the flying, and the people who are around. So we've got the 3 Ps, perceive, process, and perform, plus the PAVE checklist, 3P plus PAVE. Perceive information that's coming in, process it, and respond appropriately. We've got the 5 Ps, plan, that's your thinking about your mission plan, your plane, that's your aircraft, your hardware, pilot, that's where you can bring that I am safe checklist back in. You've got your passengers or VOs, visual observers. Passengers would be for manned aircraft, VOs would be for UAVs, but also people around. So passengers, people around, that kind of a thing. And then programming. What's your mission? What's your contingency plan? All of that kind of thing. We also have the decide model. The decide model is to detect that a change has occurred, estimate the need to counter or react, choose a desirable outcome, identify actions that can control the change, take the necessary action, and evaluate the effect of your action. Decide. DECIDE. This is basically the same thing as that circular decision-making pattern that I showed you earlier. So you need to figure out what's going on, assess the risk, decide what you can do about it, make that decision, monitor the results, and then keep going. Now, automatic decision-making is kind of a different way to think about this whole process of risk assessment and response. And the idea here is that some studies have shown that experts kind of quickly imagine a course of action. Rather than comparing pros and cons for several scenarios, you just say, okay, I'm going to do this. And they sort of quickly imagine that out. And they appropriately respond because maybe they've got experience or maybe they've just thought about this. And this is where thinking about things in advance can really help. So this automatic decision-making, it's almost like you're a robot. You receive a stimulus, aircraft coming into the airspace, what do I do? And you respond immediately with the appropriate action. And it comes, as I said, based on experience, and also scenario-based training can help. And so it's helpful for you as a UAV pilot to, before you go to your site, think about, okay, what are some potential risks that could occur, and how might I respond to those? And then when those risks happen, if they happen, you are hopefully better prepared in order to be able to respond very quickly. All right, operational pitfalls. These are kind of like gotchas. And just general things to be aware of. So peer pressure is an example where, you're with other people and you're all drinking beer and someone says, hey, let's go fly the drone. And depending on your personality and confidence, this one could be extremely challenging to say, you know what, it's not safe to fly right now. Let's fly some other time when we're all in, a clear state of mind. Peer pressure is one that you really got to be aware of, really got to be confident in yourself and your ability as a pilot. You can make the right decision in the moment, but you have to do it. Mindset is one where having a particular mindset about what you want to have happen and you're unwilling to change based on circumstances. We're going to go and we're going to fly right now. No matter what the weather is, no matter what the airspace conditions are, we're going to fly. That's the wrong approach to have. You have to be flexible and adaptable depending on what's happening. Scud running is a term which basically means following the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law. And it comes from manned aircraft trying to avoid filing an IFR flight plan. That IFR is the Instrument Flight Rating flight plan, by flying just outside the clouds. So rather than going through proper procedure, they'll fly just outside the clouds, and that's called scud running. And so again, the idea here is that I'm technically obeying the rules, but not really, because what happens if a plane comes outside of those clouds, and I can't see it because it's in the clouds. This is the pitfall to avoid. Technically following the rules, but not really. Continuing VFR into IFR conditions. This is really critical for drones because you are not allowed to fly as a UAV operator. You're not allowed to fly in IFR conditions. You must have VFR conditions. You must have visual line of sight of your drone, at least without a waiver. And this can result in a crash. Getting behind the aircraft is when you can't react quickly enough to avoid a crash. So for example, if your drone is in sports mode, you're getting close to obstacles, that's where you're getting behind the aircraft. The aircraft is reaching areas where it shouldn't reach. Maybe it's crashing into a tree or something like that, and you need to just back off and slow down from that situation. Loss of situational awareness. For example, if you're flying by just looking at your control screen, maybe you're sort of semi-flying in FPV mode, but you're not really flying FPV mode and you don't have a visual observer, that would be loss of situational awareness and you have no idea what your drone is doing. Operations without sufficient battery levels, that should be pretty obvious. Flying outside the envelope, that means operating outside the manufacturer's limits. Maybe it's wind limits. Wind is much stronger than the drone is designated to take. Maybe it's temperature, whatever. You're flying outside. Oh, and then the example I have here, flying outside flying with your drone, having a center of gravity outside the manufacturer's limits. And neglecting flight planning and pre-flight checklists. These are really important for making sure that you're assessing, you're remembering to go to check all the things that need to be checked and to assess those risks that we mentioned. Okay. So the next topic, stress management, is we're going from more of the professional level to more of the personal level. And the reason this is important is because as a pilot, now especially of course for manned pilots, you're putting other people at risk when you get in a plane and fly. And it's the same thing for UAV pilots. The risk is probably not as big in most cases as a manned pilot, but you're still putting others at risk potentially because you're flying something up in the air and other people might be around and they can't control what you're doing. And so really your responsibility as a pilot goes up a level from what you would normally have. And so you have to think about things that you might not normally think about. So stress, for example. Now, all of us go under stress. I am a faculty at a university. That's a source of a lot of stress. Teaching can be stressful. Research can be stressful. All kinds of stressors in our lives. And there's two types of stress, acute stress and chronic stress. And as you can imagine, acute is sort of temporary in the moment. I've got an exam tomorrow and I've got to get it done. Or I've got a paper due tomorrow and I've got to get it done. That's academic examples, but all of us sort of know what I'm talking about, right? Acute stress. Chronic stress is more long-term stress, things that are sort of building up over time. So for example, as a faculty, we are on a semester time scale, and just over the whole course of the semester, things can get very stressful and kind of build up. The way to combat stress is, of course, through all the typical things that we know. Relaxation, physical fitness is a big one, and time management can also help. I'll say just from personal experience that I found, taking small amounts of regularly timed relaxation, so kind of a few minutes per day, part of a day per week, that kind of a thing, that can really help, both at the physical fitness level and the relaxation level. And again, this is really important because stress is going to interfere with your ability to make good decisions during difficult, stressful situations when you're flying. So something happens all of a sudden and another airplane enters your airspace, another drone even could enter your airspace, stressful situation. And if you're already stressed, then you're just not going to be able to deal with that situation as well as if you have a clear mind and are not stressed. The RPIC must understand what's going on during their entire operation. You need to have situational awareness, and fatigue, stress, work overload, all of those things reduce your overall situational awareness and reduce your ability to respond to those situations appropriately. Another big one is distraction. So stress, distraction, fatigue, these are all things that are keeping you from staying focused on flying, looking at your phone, whatever. You want to stay focused on flying when flying. All right, and then finally we have common accident factors: inadequate preparation, failure to maintain control, failure to see and avoid objects and obstructions, mismanagement of fuel and batteries, improper in-flight decisions, misjudgment of speed and or distance, selection of an unsuitable terrain to land the aircraft, improper operation of flight controls. These are all things that I've mentioned throughout this presentation, and they all are the common factors which lead to accidents. So the whole idea here is that we want to minimize the risk of accidents. We want to minimize the risk of losing a drone, of hurting someone else, of hurting ourselves from crashes or whatever. And so all these things, whether it's flying outside the envelope or flying under the influence of alcohol or flying when we haven't prepared properly for the area or the weather or whatever, those things are going to increase the risk of having something bad happen. And that's what we want to avoid if at all possible. So go back through and just review these these acronyms. They're a little hard to remember, but they're good ones, especially the I am safe checklist and the 3P plus PAVE and 5P plans and the DECIDE model. Make sure you're aware of that. Make sure that you sort of understand the logic flow here in this workflow. And where's my I am safe? Here's my I am safe: illness, medication, stress, alcohol, fatigue, emotion. These are all things that could show up on the Part 107 exam. And by having even just a basic understanding of these things, that's going to really help you reduce your risk, be safer while you're flying, and just be able to enjoy your flying instead of getting caught up in an accident or having a crash happen. Okay, so with that, I think we're done with aeronautical decision making, and I will see you in the next video.